Hiya.
Okay, now you can hear
Now I
me.
can hear you.
Hi.
Hi, so nice to meet you. Thank you. Hold on, I've lost you again.
Oh dear. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear
Okay,
you.
but Amelia, you're still muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi.
Yes, you
So the whole
can.
time I was speaking, no one could hear me. Okay,
No.
got it.
No.
Oh, okay. Kate, I was just saying what an honor it is to get to meet you. I read
Thank
your
you.
book and I'm so thrilled that we get to discuss it tonight.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you so much.
Kate, I hate to keep you hanging. Are you zooming in from the UK?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, so it's like midnight there.
Yeah, but I will say that there is something about being a writer. Like the weirdest time I've done an event was 4 a.m. Australian
Okay.
time
Oh
with
my
an event in
goodness.
England. And it was kind of, yeah, this is completely fine. It's like I'm still awake. I would have been awake anyway. This is lovely. All I've tried to do is like make my house not seem pitch black because it's quite dark.
Oh, I like your
But
decor. I think it's very pretty.
thanks. Thank
Yeah.
you. But without like super glowy.
Jesse, are we recording today's Zoom call?
We are recording.
All right.
So
Kate,
far,
are you okay
let's.
with that?
Yeah. I just emailed
Okay.
and said, yes, totally
Oh,
fine.
okay. So let's see, we have 7 attendees, and I know there were a lot more signed up. Should we just give it 2 more minutes? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah,
totally fine.
absolutely.
Okay. Kate, you're such a trooper. You're like, what's the difference between midnight and 12:02?
Truly.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I think we had 22 people sign up. So
Mm-hmm.
let's do it,
Gorgeous.
people. Let's get on the call.
I know. Everyone needs to join.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But what's nice is people will be able to watch video regardless.
That's
Mm,
true. Absolutely.
that's a good point. I feel this is almost like the reverse of New Year's Eve, watching the attendee kind of like the attendee number click upwards. It's very gratifying,
Oh,
actually.
good. Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm
It's
glad.
like,
Good.
we're
I
so
have been
popular.
High
advertising
five.
this nonstop for weeks on social
Thank
Amazing.
you.
media, in my friend groups.
Oh,
I'm like, we are going to this and we are watching this.
Thank you.
yay.
That's so,
So,
so lovely of you.
I know it's almost like a party when you're like waiting for all your guests to arrive and you have that
yeah,
moment of like, no one's going to
absolutely.
be there.
It's
Yeah.
But oh my
why I'm
gosh.
like such an adamant one. So many of my friends are like, oh no, don't show up when the party starts. I'm like, no, show up when the party starts so that somebody who is hosting doesn't have to have a single
Mhm.
moment where they're like, nobody is going to come to my party.
Oh,
I agree. I think that's a great policy.
Yeah.
I was
If you
always
show up
raised
straight
by my
away, it's like,
mother.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was raised by my mother to always give them the extra 15 minutes to get ready. She's like,
I
you
think
want
the
to be
Oh,
extra
there
15
15
minutes is a
minutes late.
classy way to do it, but I'm very like, don't show up 90 minutes late to like
No,
a
no,
house
that's too
party
late.
because that's when it'll be kicking off. It's like, no, make it kick off when they want you there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
all right. Let's see. We are up to 12 attendees. So yeah, we still have a number of people who are gonna
That's
they,
great.
they will join us when they join us. So why don't we kick this off since it is after midnight for poor Kate?
No,
Yeah.
it's only 11. We're totally fine.
Oh, it's 11. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
2 minutes past
In
11.
that
We're
case.
grand.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I'll be brief. I'm Jessie McEntee. I work in marketing here at Pequot Library. I'm delighted to introduce my colleague, Circulation Desk Representative Amelia Sullivan, who's a recent graduate of University of Connecticut and an incredibly passionate advocate for the art of the written word. Tonight, you'll enjoy hearing Amelia in conversation with Kate Young, an award-winning writer and cook known for her Little Library cookbooks, which celebrate dishes inspired by beloved works of literature. Her debut novel, Experienced, is a queer rom-com set in Bristol, England. So, without any further ado, I will let the two of you kick it off.
All right, sounds good. Kate, we are so honored to have you here with us tonight. I absolutely
Thank you
adored
so
your
much.
debut novel experience, which I have a copy of right here. So thank you for joining us. Kate is joining us all the way from England, so it's a little bit late there, and we appreciate
From
you.
near Bristol, in fact.
Oh my. All right. So my first question for you is, what was the initial the initial inspiration for Experienced? Was it semi-autobiographical at all? Were there any events or people in your life that inspired you to write it?
I think the greatest inspiration was that I spent the 6 years before writing this novel, writing one that my agent read and went, not this. And I had spent so long doing it in amongst other work. So it wasn't the one thing that I'd been focusing on, but it was 6 years of putting a lot of work into a book and being told by my agent, like, this is not really the thing. This is like trying to be 17 different things. And I can see where you're here, but I can also see where you want to be Sarah Waters and you want to be Agatha Christie and you want to be all these other people. And actually, what are you like? And I had this moment of just going, oh, I've written a book that I think people are going to want from me rather than a book that I would enjoy to write and to read. And I went home and she'd given me a bunch of advice on that novel. And I put the novel in a drawer and have never looked at it since. And instead went, I'm going to have to, if I am going to try again and write something new and write another novel, I need it to be for pure fun. And so I kind of went, I need to think about all of the scenes I would love to write, all of the bits of life I would want to include. And I want it to be a purely fun novel. And it's not autobiographical, which is a relief, in that these characters are chaos. And I would feel it would be terrible if I was any one of these people, particularly if I was Bette, who I have great affection for, but very much look at as a sort of a version of a world in which I can imagine being faced with the dilemma that she meets in the first chapter and doing the exact opposite and just not reacting in the way that she reacts. And the book was essentially a thought experiment of going, who is the character who reacts to this question posed by a girlfriend, i.e., we've been together for this time, but I think you should go and be with other people for a bit so that I'm not your only experience of dating women. What is the character who says yes to that? Who is she? What is her vibe? What is going to be this? How is the story going to unfold? So the impetus was very like, this is a fun question that a lot of queer women I know have sort of faced and had conversations about. This sort of gap between people who've been aware of their sexuality for a long time and people who are quite new in coming to it, and the disconnect between those things, and sometimes that being an issue and sometimes it not being an issue, and just wondering what would happen if somebody responded to it in the way that Bette does in this book.
Absolutely. Thank you for explaining a little bit more behind the creation of the novel. How long were you planning Experience? Did you kind of was the plot something that you sort of had mapped out from the beginning, or were you more it was mapped out from the beginning, or you were more just kind of figuring out as you went along a little bit?
I love to plan. I'm terrible. So the books that I had written before this, apart from like the failed novel, the books that I had written before this were all cookbooks, which are like absolutely categorically books about planning. They are books about instruction and recipes and structure and the sort of structuring of how you're going to include all of those recipes and how you're going to write about them and what you're going to do and how they're going to fit together. And I've never been very good at kind of just going into something not knowing where it's going to go. So I spent about 3 months before I sat down to plan, just imagining good scenes. I was working on something else. I was working on a cookbook at that time. So I had lots else going on, but I would just go on drives or go on walks and I would map out things in my head and leave myself voice notes. And then I spent all of January 2022 with like a big corkboard and post-it notes and my wall and just mapped out what I thought the book could look like. And then went into a stage of just going, I'm going to plan it. I'm not going to write a thing, and I'm going to know where the book is going by the time I'm finished this structure and this plan.
Oh, I see. I suppose as someone who made the leap from cookbooks to novels, it sounds like there was a lot more overlap than I guess I would have initially anticipated or predicted for that. So it's interesting how you kind of approach them in similar ways, which I think is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it very quickly became clear that the thing that I had to do with a novel that I've never had to do with a cookbook is the continuity, is the like through line of a narrative. And the challenge of, I was really experienced and had done a lot of writing in isolation. So writing a recipe intro and then the instructions and then turning a page and writing a new one. And there being a thread through those, because when you write about food, you're writing about life and family and love and friends and all of those things. So there was always a through line, but not necessarily a continual narrative. So it was interesting to come to something that, yes, I had planned in a sort of similar structured way, but that the real challenge was going, okay, each chapter actually has to then follow on to the next one and everything has to link up. And if I do something in chapter 1, it's going to change what happens in chapter 8. And then if I decide I want these characters to do something in chapter 12, I have to lay the groundwork for that much earlier. And all of those ways in which cookbooks don't work, or my cookbooks don't work. That's not true of everyone's, but yeah.
I see. And was there a particular scene that you found challenging to write? What was the hardest scene to write in Experienced?
I think because it's a romantic comedy, people have expectations about how particular, like crucial core scenes in that sort of book are going to happen and how they sit and where they sit. So I was very aware that I needed to really nail the like final run to the airport and how the characters like come to a realization that they should be together, or, you know, whatever it is that they come to at the end. I found that scene really hard to nail because I've seen so many versions of it. I wanted to do something that felt true to those characters and not just true to the genre. I love the genre. I'm such a massive romance fan. I'm such a massive romantic comedies fan. I hope you can tell that from the book, but it is like, I really wanted it to feel like those characters in their lives, not playing out a romantic comedy, but just being real people in that scene. And I think that when it's a genre where you expect something to happen in the end, it's should always feel like inevitable and almost predictable that that's how it's going to end, but it should feel like earned in the way that it does.
Absolutely. It sounds, well, I mean, when I was reading Experience, something I found so refreshing was how realistic the characters seemed to be, and everyone had their own motivations, their own personalities. It didn't all get muddled. So I think it's great that you were kind of trying to avoid those tropes that kind of, no matter how terrible or questionable or problematic the characters might be. For example, in Pride and Prejudice, you just know the ending is going to be they're going to end up together.
Of course.
So trying to avoid those tropes and kind of having more realistic characters that have foibles and they're not just Mary Sue characters, very perfect. They make all the right decisions. So I thought that was a really enjoyable. It was a raw, messy, and beautiful read, and I devoured it. I really did. So I guess another question I have for you is, when you were fleshing out all of these characters, was it challenging for you to do that? Because as you said earlier, the characters, they're chaotic, they're messy. So was it difficult kind of, I guess, not putting people into different boxes, but sort of having characters that were distinctive, but human and relatable? And was that a challenge at all to do all those different characters and flesh them out?
It definitely is a challenge. I guess like the only way I know how to do it is to have a real sense of them before I started writing. So part of that planning month was very much getting a sense of all the voices of those characters and writing bits in their voice that I knew would never make it into the book, and having a sense of their history and stuff that feels important to me, but that doesn't necessarily make it explicitly into the narrative. So I know how these characters met if they're friends, I know how they met. I know what their history has been before we get to the novel. And it's really useful. I love writing the friends in the book. I loved putting a lot of time and investment into friendship. It's a way that I live my life. It's a very truthful sort of, it feels like very authentic to value those sort of relationships and to put them like front and center on the page and in the narrative. And I think that they're also in the genre incredibly useful characters, because you do, as you say, have these like quite chaotic romantic characters who, if they're not a bit chaotic, don't feel very real, because there's no reason why two people who are well adjusted and pretty normal and pretty focused couldn't just get it together on page 1. If you have romantic comedy characters and your central characters are kind of just making good decisions and doing good things, then probably they'll just get together with the person they're supposed to be with, and that will be no narrative at all. And so it was really fun to kind of go, okay, what if I gave these characters quite self-aware friends, as often happens in romantic comedies, so that we can see a reflection of that chaos and a sort of depiction of how that chaos is maybe affecting people that they're not seeing outside of that circle. And I really had a lot of fun with all of that. But the way that I do dialogue and that I write the way that characters interact with each other is that I say it all out loud. It's really lame. If I'm writing in a cafe, I will say it in my head and I will say it out loud when I get home. But I basically like write the dialogue as though it's a film script, as though I'm only doing like line by line what the characters are saying to each other. And I will then go back the next day and fill it in with, said this person and they were doing this at this moment and this is how this scene looked. And then I'm going to put in this paragraph about whatever else. But I start with the dialogue so that it sounds as though those characters are truly speaking to one another. And I know sometimes that means that character sentences break off halfway through, or they start one sentence and then stop it and start another one instead. And I just wanted that to feel as truthful and authentic as possible, because I feel like, particularly in this sort of genre, characters who speak in like really articulate, fantastic, well-constructed paragraphs, again, are not chaotic enough that you would buy their romantic foibles.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving more insight into how you did the dialogue, because it felt very organic. It didn't feel stiff, because I've noticed some artists, some authors you read, it sounds very stiff and it's hard to get through. You're just kind of muddling through. So to pivot a little bit, right now there has been a wave of, I suppose, more conservative beliefs and politicians sweeping the planet, particularly here in the United States. How did you deal with, was there any, when you put out Experienced, were you dealing with any vulnerability or anxiety about putting out this, beautiful work about, LGBTQ plus relationships? It's a challenging time for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, I think that I kind of hadn't, I would say that most of my experience of being gay is pretty great. I'm an incredibly privileged person in that I am white, cis, and able-bodied. And that means that I live in a position of great privilege within this community, where so many people who I know and love have far more that is like actively coming against them than I do. And that is an eternal struggle and challenge for a lot of people. And I feel incredibly lucky that for me, most of my days pass with me seeing my girlfriend and hanging out with her, and then seeing pals who are also queer, and that not necessarily being a huge thing in our everyday lives. That said, the government in your country, in my country, and, the way that the rhetoric is, particularly around trans community, the way that the sort of conversation is with trans people in this country and in your country, it is something that is unavoidable in daily news. It is not unavoidable in my daily life, but it is unavoidable in my daily, like, wider understanding of the world and my wider scope. And so it is impossible to write about queer people and not think, gosh, I hope it goes all right. I hope it reaches the right people. And I hope that I am okay. I hope that my experience of this is good and warm and rich. And I, again, have been incredibly lucky that it mostly is. But I would say that it is something that is certainly, it's not nothing. It's an industry that wants diversity and also wants to sell books, and that sometimes those things are less compatible than the industry would like them to be, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Thank you for sharing. I have been out and proud for about a decade now, and I'm also privileged to be white and cis and able-bodied. And it has been really challenging watching my friends and my family and people that are in the community be impacted by the current administration. I mean, even in our home state, Connecticut, which I don't know because you're in England, you probably don't know American geography. We're very close to New York.
I know American
We're very close to
geography.
New York.
Yeah, yeah.
Even here, a lot of major hospitals and healthcare groups, they have been rolling back healthcare and gender affirming care for transgender people, especially for minors. And it has been devastating to watch and watch the outrage and the ripple effect in the community. So it's, I think putting anything out right now, it is vulnerable, and there is that, I guess, anxiety and uncertainty, unfortunately. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
To anybody out there right now that might be watching, or people in general that may be questioning their identity, or they're uncertain, or they want to come out and they're afraid to, or they have any sort of trepidation, what advice would you give them about that?
This is how I hoped you would follow up that question, because the real truth is that, like, it is a scary time, and it is a horrible time for a lot of people who are seeking care that they can't get, and seeking support that is not there. However, what is true, and has been true for a long time and will continue to be true, is that this is a truly extraordinary community to be part of. It has been the most joyous and incredible thing in my life to meet queer people and count myself amongst them. And that is true of lesbian community, that is true of other communities under the wider LGBTQ plus umbrella. It is a daily pleasure and joy to be part of that community. And I think that what I wanted was to write a book that wasn't about coming out, because I think that so many narratives we get, particularly as queer women, are about women who are coming out and women who are realizing their sexuality. And I really wanted a book that wasn't about somebody wrestling with that, but instead somebody wrestling with, like, how can I be a good person when I date people? How can I sort of advocate for myself and also engage with people I'm dating with in a way that feels like responsible and good and fun and sexy and all of those things? How can I include all of those things in this same conversation? And so I wanted to write a book that truly was about joy and about queer joy. And I think that that is something really brilliant to be able to write about. And my message essentially is that, like, the real message of the book is there is joy here, and there is joy to be found, and that there is real joy in knowing yourself and what you want, and that is something you should feel excited about. And I wish the world told everyone that as well. I wish it wasn't, a thing that we had to say, no, it will be okay. I wish it was just like, no, it's great and okay. But I think it's important to be like, no, it is good. And there is joy.
Absolutely. So is that sort of the message of the book you'd hope readers would take away, that there is joy and there is hope?
Yeah, I think that is the message that I want to take away about, like, queerness in general, and about dating and about that. But the big message of the book, I suppose, is that love looks like many different things, that there are many different ways of being in love and having love in your life, and that is true whether you're queer or straight or whatever it is that you have in your life. It is true that there are many, many different ways to be in love, and that feels, again, good and exciting and rich and fulfilling, and that you should be as excited about all of those opportunities as possible.
Absolutely. Speaking of different types of love, something I really appreciate about Experienced was, it is a romantic comedy. So of course, the romantic love is sort of center stage, especially as Bette is discovering figuring out what she wants, what she doesn't want in a partner. But what I really loved was also the emphasis on found family and friends, as you were talking about earlier, because Bette has a really wonderful, supportive community around her. Even Ruth does. They both have these wonderful friends and people that are there, and they have that community. So I think, stressing the importance of different kinds of love, even in a romantic comedy, I thought that was really nice. So it was, it was good to see that, absolutely, because I feel like our society tends to put a premium on romantic love, without really emphasizing, self-love or friends or family. And it was really nice. So
thank you. That's really what I hope. It's really my experience, again, of life, is that love in all its forms is a true joy and the best part of life. And so that feels like a really fun thing and great thing to be able to write about.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier that the characters were not really based off of you. They were chaotic, they were messy. Were there any characters you perhaps related to a little bit more? Any characters you put a little bit more of your essence into? Or is just a purely hypothetical, fun imagining of these characters that just kind of came to you?
I think that I kind of thought a lot about this, and what is true is that no emotion that a character has in this book is an emotion that I haven't felt at some point. I know that there are people who can write books about people having emotions that they haven't had, or like, you know, that they're writing like far outside their own experience. But my true feeling here is that I am writing about experiences in a wider sense of like yearning for someone, being in love with someone, wanting somebody, like all of those things are emotions and truth that I have experienced, but none of the events in the book happened. So what has been a really fun thing is like so I wrote this in 2022, so we're talking like 3 years ago now. What is fun is looking back at it now and going like, oh, I didn't realize that I'd put like my little bit of sensibility into that person there, or like that the way that somebody was talking about X is actually the way that I feel about that, you know. So I was definitely writing things that are in my head and that I'm thinking, but the characters, there's such a mix of different thoughts and sensibilities and bits of me and bits of other people I love and bits of like people I've met in the past who I don't love, and you know, all sorts of people, that it's really difficult to now point at them and go, this person's is me, or this person has my, you know, this bit of this person is me. None of them are directly me at all. But I think it's very interesting, particularly when women write, that a lot of the sort of assumption when you're writing in a contemporary setting is that you would be the central character, that you're inserting yourself into the narrative. And it's something that it has come up a lot and that I've thought about a lot. And I would say that my one thing is like, Bette is the character I feel least like. So it's been really interesting to me. Like, I feel far more like I can see more of myself in Ruth or in Ash or in like there's loads of other characters that I kind of see bits of myself in. It's very interesting to me that I wrote a central character where I'm like, lots of these emotions are emotions I've had, but none of the ways she's responding to things are things that I would do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
does make sense. Yes, definitely. So in Experienced, there are a couple scenes that are definitely spicier. And I was wondering, did any emotions or challenges come up when writing the spicier scenes? I felt as a queer woman reading a book written by another queer woman, I thought the depictions of intimacy, I thought they were like really honest, really beautiful, really realistic. And especially considering how many recent studies have come out about how women in particular feel pressured to be performative or fake during intimacy to kind of uphold the heteronormative standards in our society. So I imagine writing intimate scenes, it might be a little bit tricky to kind of get it right and get it realistic and have it be, you know, a beautifully well done scene. So
Thank you.
how did you tackle that? How did you deal with that? How did you write those scenes?
The first thing is that in this first book, I never thought anyone would read it. So it's really easy to write when you're like, I'm just writing for no one, I guess, just to play around with this book and see what happens. But also the sex that the character that Bette has in this book is really fundamental to her character development. It's really important. And I think that it feels easier to write because it never felt like I was being gratuitous for gratuity's sake. Like, as much as I love to read a sex scene that's gratuitous for gratuity's sake, like my big thing in writing it was like, what is she learning about herself here? What is changing in this scene? What emotions is she feeling? How is she engaging with this? How is this experience going to affect her moving forward? And because the book is so much about sex, it felt really important to get that right. And so I wrote sex the same way that I wrote everything else, which is to, I guess, imagine it kind of as a continuation of all of the scenes of dialogue, which is just characters are suddenly doing different things rather than speaking to each other, but they are still engaging with each other. They are responding to one another. They are in a scene playing back and forth against one another. It's not like enormously different from writing dialogue. And I do think that in a lot of ways, like being a food writer really helps, because you are writing in very, very different ways, but still fundamentally about five senses, about like, what can you see, what can you hear, what can you taste, what can you touch, what can you smell? Like all of those things are how you write about food and how you engage with food, and also how you write about sex and how you engage with sex. So those things, I think I had a lot of fun. They're fun scenes to write. It was never a chore. But honestly, the whole book was fun scenes to write and never a chore, because I'd done that really deliberately. It was exactly the sort of thing I wanted to write.
I really appreciate you taking us through a little bit more of the process and the thoughts behind how you executed those scenes. I also found it interesting how you mentioned your sort of your background in writing about food and the five senses. That is a really interesting way of looking at it, because from an initial glance, one would not consider, I feel like, novels and cookbooks to have very much in common, and yet they're all about sensing and smelling and hearing and tasting and
also about like desire and wanting and hunger, and all of these things that are words we use about food are also words that work for sex. That it's all about like body pleasure and enjoying what it is you're engaging with. And that, I think, even when Bette is not enjoying the sex, there's sex in the book that she likes more than she likes others. You know, there's experiences that she has that aren't extraordinary, that aren't sort of anything to write home about. And that felt very important, that it was like, it doesn't always have to be good to be important and game-changing here. And I think that I wanted as well to make sure that the sex that I was writing was sometimes like, it's not realistic if it's always good. Like you do, you know, if you're going and sleeping with some random people and some strangers that you've not been with before, sometimes that's going to be great, and sometimes it's going to be weird and awkward and funny, and sometimes it's going to be weird and awkward and a bit sad, and you're going to feel weird about it afterwards. Like, I think it felt really good and interesting and important to bring a sense of true reality to those scenes, because then when it is great, it feels really sort of seismic and meaningful and affecting, because you're kind of like, yes, this is what it should feel like.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I want to pivot again, still on the topic of food, but more about, did you always want to be a writer? How did you get your start in writing cookbooks? What is your favorite recipe or thing to make? Like, I would love to hear a little bit more about that. And do you have any culinary icons?
I have many culinary icons. I grew up loving food writing. I read a lot of it when I was a kid. I've loved, you know, there's a lot of like British food writers who I really admire. I love Diana Henry. I think her writing's extraordinary. I love Nigel Slater. I love Nigella. I really grew up reading that sort of canon of writers. Less so Diana, who like started a bit later, and I came to when I moved here. But that was sort of, I was spending my secondary school years like reading a lot of food writing. I grew up in a house where we cooked a lot, and so it was a thing I was really engaged with. But I trained as a secondary school biology and drama teacher. When I first moved to the UK, spent my first year being a teacher and working as a teacher at night while interning in theatres during the day. And then I was a theatre producer for 7 years. So I have a really mixed background in terms of work. And when I had a blog in 2014 writing recipes, like a lot of people had in 2014, it would be a Substack now, but it was a blog back then. And I was writing recipes, and I was writing a recipe a week when I was a theatre producer, and my recipes got picked up by The Guardian. It was a moment of sort of both. I always say it's luck, and it was luck, but it was also like I had 60, 70 recipes online that I could point people towards, and I'd practice my photography, and the recipes were getting better and the writing was getting better and all of that. It was hard work, but it was great timing as well. And I hadn't planned on leaving my job in theatre to be a writer. I had thought about opening a cafe. I'd thought about loads of different things, but my blog got picked up by The Guardian, and I got a sort of column writing for the books team in The Guardian every week. And I also, because I wrote about food and literature, that's what my blog was, and that's what I continued to write for years. And then my stuff was getting shared, and I got a few agents got in touch, and I ended up signing a book deal at the end of 2015, and then spent the next few years writing that. So I planned to leave theatre for a year to go and do that, and I have never gone back. So it was 10 years ago, and I still am doing this.
I had no idea about your theater background. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So you definitely have had many different, I guess, influences and elements that sort of impact you as a person, influence your writing as well. What is the best book you've read this year?
Oh my God, such a hard question. Such a hard question. Let's come back to it. I'm gonna be really deliberate about it, because I always blurt out the first thing and then go, no, wait, I should have. And I will, yes.
All
There've
right,
been
let
some
me
great
know,
things.
because I have
Yes.
a favorite book from this year. So
Do
would love
you?
to share when you share. I'd love
Brilliant.
to
Okay,
share. Yes,
perfect.
absolutely. So when you're writing a novel, I know you mentioned the first book that you had written, your agent wasn't really a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
Did you deal with or grapple with any imposter syndrome when writing experience, or is it a
Oh,
very
definitely.
confident, smooth? Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
have any advice on how to deal with that for people that would want to be writers or want to write more?
I think my only way of getting through it, honestly, and it's something I've now written 5 cookbooks and an anthology and a novel and other writing in lots of different places, and I still every day get up and I'm like, this, seriously, I'm allowed to do this as a job? This is mad. Nobody should be paying me to do this. And that has never stopped. And I think that my sensibility means that it probably never will. And so the only way to kind of recover from that or work through that or push through that is just to write regardless of who's going to read it, to write regardless of how I felt. I think that the writing of this book certainly was such an exercise in hope, such an exercise in, like, I had fully written an entire 110,000 word book that my agent had been like, no, not this one. And she was right to, like, she was absolutely right. It was not the right book. But to get up and write another book after that was very much an experience of just going, I have to write only for me and for my pals. And if we are the only ones who read this, then I want not to have wasted this time. And the only way in which I can square that in my head is to be like, I have to be having fun. I have to be enjoying this. I have to be sort of experiencing this in a way that feels rich and good and satisfying for its own sake, not just satisfying when I imagine an outcome. Because I think having only a book at the end of it as the only version of success would have made it very difficult to get up and do it when I had no idea that that would be what happened. And I think that I am incredibly lucky that a lot of my circle of friends and people I've met in the past decade are also people who write. And it's incredibly reassuring to me to know that that's a feeling that a lot of people have. It's a feeling that a lot of people that I think are extraordinary, who write incredible books, have. And I think that the only way of pushing through and doing it is to do it. I think It can be totally it can freeze you and make you stop writing and stop working. And the only way I know how to sort of rectify that and solve that is to just try and write something else, try and get up and go for a walk and think about what thing you're going to do next, record a bunch of voice notes about that thing you're going to sit down and write. And if looking at a blank screen is terrifying, there are so many like writing exercises and writing prompts and loads of different ways of starting to write online. And so much of being a writer is just being a writer, as in putting words on a page. And so any way you're doing that, any way you're engaging with that is a sort of useful thing to start with.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I've definitely dealt with that before when writing, papers for school or trying to write poetry, just that imposter of like, oh, my work isn't that good, or no one should read this, or you're like, just burn it,
Yeah.
tear it up, throw it in a drawer, don't look at it ever again. So art is really not created in a vacuum, and we're definitely always drawing on other people and sources of inspiration. Did you have any literary inspiration for experience, any pieces of media, any books, any artists, anyone or anything that was sort of inspiring the book?
I mean, I was a person who in my teenage years was very much identified by being somebody who read books. And so I was a massive nerd who read a lot of books and had a great time doing that. But what that means often is that this voice creeps into the back of your head that says, if this is your identity, the books you read need to be clever, and they need to be worthy, and they need to be literary, and they need to be a very specific kind of book. And so I spent a lot of my teens and my 20s reading books that I thought were the right kind of books for me to be reading, and then quietly on the side reading romance. And it was a real moment in my 30s of just going, what if instead I just enjoyed reading and I didn't have to define myself by having read the biggest and most difficult and longest books, and instead read for pure pleasure, and that sometimes that involved reading Anna Karenina, and sometimes that involved reading Emily Henry, and sometimes that involved reading Ashley Herring Blake, and sometimes that involved reading Casey McQuiston. And what if all of these people whose books I adore and who are beautiful writers were also writers of romantic comedies? I had never had, and this was the really interesting thing to my own head, is that I'd never had a sense of snobbery or imposter syndrome, imposter like reading syndrome about films, because I didn't define myself by films. I really love films, but it had always seemed okay to like romantic comedies in a way that it had always seemed like a thing I should be quiet about, that I really liked romance novels. And it's been a real magic realization to just go like, I really identify with this community. I love this community. We are a group of people who love to read, and we're a group of people who love love, and that feels really fun and good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. Another thing is, I know you recently launched a new cookbook called Dinner at Mine. Congratulations. That's so
Thank
exciting
you.
and huge. When is that destined to hit shelves?
It will be March 12th next year.
All right,
So
that's
it's like,
wonderful.
it's still a few months to go, but because it's cookery and because it takes ages to print, because they're beautiful and colored and hardback and all of that stuff, it has gone to print already. So if it was a novel, we'd still be like doing the final tweaks or final pages or final, like we would have had proofs out in the world, but we'd be like still playing with it. But it's gone to print, and so it will now be a thing, and I'm really excited about it. It's my favorite cookbook I've written so far.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. Do you have
Thank you.
any other creative endeavors in the works right now? Would you think you'd ever write another novel at some point? Do you think you'd stay in the romantic comedy genre or branch out to something else?
I think I would love to write another novel. I think that I'm working on a bunch of things at the moment. I am excited to figure out which one is the right one and what the right next steps are and what the right next novel is. But I've had a bunch of ideas for novels I want to write. I've taken most of this year to write cookbook and to finish that and do all the testing and make sure that was ready. So it feels, now that that's gone to print, like I'm back in the world of novels, and that feels really fun to still be like playing with both spaces. And so my hope is that there will be another novel in a couple of years' time that is ideally something I'm working on at the moment. that becomes the next thing, that, you know, that idea crystallizes and becomes the right next book.
Definitely, definitely. Out of the new cookbook, is there a particular recipe or favorite thing that you put into it, that it's a go-to dinner, or something that you just really enjoy, you think readers will enjoy making as well?
The next book is such a fun one because it's my first one that's not about literary works. It's not about novels. It's not about other people's. The first cookbooks are all sort of taking things that characters eat in fiction, in novels, and recreating them. And so the next one is like a real encapsulation of like what I make for dinner for pals and people, and, you know, and people I love. My absolute favorite recipe in the book is a courgette pickle, which is super easy. A zucchini pickle, like zucchini pickle. There's a whole chapter on zucchinis, and on fun things to do with a zucchini, because there's just, you know, it's basically the sort of concept of the book is that there's 15 different chapters after 15 ingredients, and just new ideas for that ingredient for dinner. And the courgette pickle is great because you can have it on a sandwich, you can have it on rice with a boiled egg, you can have it on the side of meat, on the side of veg, on the side of anything. And I started making it, I think that recipe has been the same for maybe 4 years of working on this cookbook. And it's so rare that there isn't that pickle in my fridge now. It's there all the time. That's my favorite one in the book, I think.
That sounds good. I definitely am looking forward to checking out the cookbook when it comes out in March of next year.
Thank
Will
you.
it be releasing in the UK at the same time as the US, or will it be
It
releasing
should be,
makers?
yeah. So it's released by Bloomsbury, and they have distributors in the US. So they are in charge of like US as well.
Definitely. All right. It sounds like you do a lot of entertaining and a lot of cooking for people. What are your top tips for hosting a great dinner party?
Oh my God, a great question. First is something that took me years and years to learn, which is let people help you. People love to come into your house and feel useful. And that might sometimes be that you keep your best pal around at the end and you wash up together. Or it might be that somebody who arrives on time, like 5 minutes before everybody else, says, "Can I help?" And what I do, because I'm terrible at delegating and letting people help me, as somebody who is a massive people pleaser and sort of recovering type A girl, what I do is have a list of things that might be useful to have other people do. So it's like, oh yeah, can you get some cutlery and can you put them on the table, or can you do napkins, or can you, like, you know, whatever it is that might be useful to help, like set a table or finish off a dish or make a dressing, or like whatever it is. People just love to be useful. I love to be useful. I love to go into somebody else's house, say, "Can I help?" and have them say yes. And I think that it kind of gives you sort of a camaraderie with people who you love, who are coming for dinner, if you're somebody who doesn't often host. So if you're somebody who like feels a bit like anxious about hosting or about the pressure of hosting, it kind of takes the pressure off to bring somebody else into that gang and do it together. And the next thing is to like make sure, if you're going to do like, the book is not really full of big dinner party menus of course and course and course. It's very much like, come round for dinner tonight, here's something we could do, or come round for dinner on Sunday and here's something more extravagant. But it's like, it's a thing, it's a one-off. I think that if you're going to do having people round, then make your life easier by like starting with crisps or finishing with like something simple, or let somebody bring dessert. You don't have to, hosting doesn't have to be 3 courses if you don't want it to be. It can be, if that's fun for you, that's totally grand. But like, people just love to be fed. It's that thing that, you know, is really true of somebody who cooks a lot, is that friends go like, "Oh, I couldn't have you around for dinner, I wouldn't know what to cook." And you're like, I love somebody to cook me dinner. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you give me toasted like cheese toasty, or I don't care if you give me soup. It would all be heaven. That would be amazing. You could buy a takeaway and serve it to us and I'd be thrilled. Like, having people round does not have to be a thing that makes you feel like suddenly you're on display, the pressure is on and you're stressed.
All right, thank you for sharing. My final question for you is kind of circling back to an earlier question. Do you have an answer for what your favorite book was this year?
The safe keep.
The Safekeep.
Yes, I
Okay.
loved The Safe Keep. It was absolute heaven. It was just, I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. Have you read it?
I haven't, no. I'll have to check that out. I'll let you know how I like it. Thank you.
You really should. I would love to hear what you think. It's by
I'm
Yale
writing it down.
Vanderbilt. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It won, I think, the Women's Prize here.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
I just thought it was extraordinary. It went places that I didn't expect it to go. I read it like the reason that I kind of really latched onto it as soon as you said it, and then went back in my head and was like, no, be calm, think, was that the best book you read this year? It was a real, like, I read it at the very, very start of the year. And so it's very in my head as like, yes, I read that this year. There are also like some extraordinary things that I've read that I will keep thinking about, and some of which don't come out till next year. I'm in a really lucky position of like people send me books and I get to read stuff that's coming out, and all of that's been great. But The Safe Keep was like a really special reading experience as well, in that I was, I was on my own on like the sort of days at the end of Christmas and then in the new year. And it was a very quiet house. And I was just like, I am reading this book all to myself, and it's really good.
Oh, that's great. I'll check it out. Thank you.
You're
My
so
favorite book from
welcome.
this year, I promised I'd tell you. It's not hard to guess. It was actually Experienced.
Oh,
It made
mate,
me
that's so
so happy
nice.
to read. I laughed, I cried. I told everyone in
Thank
my
you.
life to read it. I thought it was so well done. Some
Thank you
honorable
so much.
mentions to Eat the Ones You Love, which is fantastic.
Oh, how good is
Oh
it?
God, it was
So good.
fantastic. That was
Loved
great.
it.
I also loved Wild Dark Shore and Sourdough. Those are two other
Okay.
really good books.
I
Yeah.
haven't read Wild Dark Shore yet. Okay,
It
great.
was fantastic. Yes, I definitely recommend that.
Brilliant.
But
Yeah,
yeah, it
Eat
was
the Ones You Love.
Experience.
I love Sarah's.
Oh wow, it was fantastic. Yeah, so talented. I was just like,
Yeah,
wow, this is
she's
fantastic.
amazing.
It was funny when I followed her, I saw that you were already following her account. I'm like, I'll bet Kate has read this book as well.
I have
So
read that book. In
yeah,
fact,
it was
like I know her.
fantastic.
She's a pal.
Yes.
She's great.
Yeah, definitely. I have been trying to read. I want to get to 52 books for this year. I want to have one book. I'm up to almost 40. I don't know. I
You're
don't
gonna
know.
make it. Come
I'm gonna
on.
make it. I'm gonna make it. So thank you. I'll definitely check out The Safekeep. I'm in a bit of a reading rut right now, to be
Okay,
honest.
it is.
So
I would say it's a real good one for getting you out of a rut, in that
okay.
it's like maybe just under 200 pages. It's
Oh,
little,
okay.
it's a banger. There's stuff happening. It doesn't go where you expect it to go. It's a really satisfying read.
All right. Thank you. Well, I'd love to open it up to our audience if there's any questions to ask Kate. And be sure to
Oh,
check out
brilliant.
her new cookbook coming out in March of 2026, Dinner at Mine. So definitely check that out.
Thank you.
So if you want to ask a question, you need to raise your hand, your virtual hand. Amelia, do you know how to do that? Oh,
Oh, hold
we
on.
have
There's questions in the Q&A.
someone has managed to do that.
All right.
Okay, hold on. I'm reading this question, which is from Catherine. May's break felt both loving and cruel, almost protective and self-serving at once. How did you want readers to see her decisions? Was that drawn from your own experience, or was it purely a plot catharsis? It almost felt like May paid a price for that choice in the end. Did you intend for the outcome as it happened, or did her story and ending evolve as you wrote? Yeah, I think this was such an interesting thing to me. So the question really came not from a sort of the question that May poses at the beginning, which is like, it's not even a question, it's sort of an instruction and a prompt, and all of that is very much a sense of, you must want to do this. We've been together, but I'm the first woman you've dated, and I think you should go off and date other people before we get serious. And I spent a lot of time thinking how Bette is responding to that and how she's engaging with that question. And it was a question that I knew had been asked of a friend of mine, had been asked of me, but I responded to it very differently. It's a question that I knew had come up in queer circles quite a lot. And it's such an interesting one because I've had a lot of people who are straight come up to me at events and be like, really? it felt like such a wild, crazy, like first chapter, and what a wild thing to ask. And it was so interesting to me because I was like, oh, I have a bunch of friends who've had this conversation. I think this feels very familiar and very real in my like circle of people. That question of experience and of like how long you've been out and all of that might come into play when you're dating somebody for the first time. And I spent a lot of time, as I say, thinking about the impact on Bette. And then it wasn't until probably at the end of the planning that I was kind of like, where's that question come from? Like, why is May asking that question? What is she doing? How is she feeling? And it really was a sense of, I think that you're totally right, that it's both protective and self-serving. Like it gives, I do not think that my like personal read on it, and it's fiction, like you might have a different read, Catherine, and it might be that you disagree with what I'm about to say, and that's totally valid. Like there are lots of different experiences of how you might read this. But for me, the question, the sort of the prompt posed by May wasn't done so that May could go and sleep with other people. It was done because she was scared. It was done because she was scared of how intense this relationship was seeming and wanted to find a way to ease a little. And that what she expected to happen was for Bette to like take a week and then come back. And when she didn't, when the break really happened, May spiraled and lost her mind and essentially went, I cannot be the person who at the end of this is single. And so I think that she, if that makes sense, that was how I always saw it. That was as soon as I started really considering who this character was, that's very much where it landed for me. And I think that's why it's important that we see her at the hospital with her dad. I'm trying not to like ruin stuff for people who haven't read yet and who are going to, but I think that it was really important that we sort of bring her into the narrative halfway through and that we have a scene of them together, because obviously the first time we see them together is almost the last time really that we have a sense of what their relationship might have been like. And we get a sort of a hint of it in that middle section. And it felt really important to return to it in a sense of just, oh, May has really lost something here because she was afraid of how she was going to keep it. And I think that they weren't right for each other, and it's correct that this break happens, but I think that both of them didn't handle it very well. That's my thought. Does that make sense? And also this question of, do you think someone can ever be behind in their own identity journey? Sorry, I read journal and I knew you meant journey because you'd said below. No, I really fundamentally think that this narrative of being behind, this narrative of late in life coming out, or any of that language, is language that Bette has for herself, that is a story that she's telling herself. I think that sexuality is complex, that people are complex, that heteronormativity is complex, and that it puts us in a position of perhaps not understanding desire and understanding sexual attraction in a way that you might wish to. And so I think that it is very interesting to tell ourselves stories about about sexuality and about these narratives and about identity and about how all of those things flow. But I think you're right. I think that it's a story we tell ourselves, and it's only useful to you if it's useful. I do not personally believe that anyone is behind on their own story, because the only person who it's affecting is you. It's your story. We are all exactly where we need to be. If that helps.
All right, I think we have time for one more question from the audience. If anyone has anything else they'd like to ask Kate.
Oh, thank you, Erica. Thank you. I don't know if everyone else can see these questions as well. But Erica just said that she wanted to say thank you for taking the time to talk to you all. And I've really, really enjoyed it too. It's been brilliant. And I look forward to, hearing what you all think of the cookbook and future books and all of that. It's been, a true joy to talk to you all. And to you, Amelia, thank you so much for hosting and for your great questions.
Oh, truly my pleasure. I am just so happy that when I fangirl sent you a DM on Instagram being like, hi, I'm reading your book. It's so wonderful. And then finishing it and asking if you do a talk with us at the Pequot. Thank you so much for being open to this and for being
Thank
up
you.
so late and answering your questions so thoughtfully. It has been such a pleasure. I happy I got to meet you, even if it's only virtually. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Jessie, for helping to host as well. I really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I
Of
am.
course, we're gonna have to take a field trip across the pond.
Yes,
yes, we are.
Can you host us for a nice dinner?
Yes, please. Please.
We would love that.
I am.
We'll start
I
with
am
crisps.
somebody who,
You had me at
loads
starting
of
with
crisps.
crisps. I was like,
So
okay.
many crisps. Yeah.
Sounds great.
The big through line of all my books, I guess, is crisps, and I think that is really important. All my fiction
Okay.
and my nonfiction.
It's a great motif.
Yeah, I do think it feels really important to say, like, it's a real privilege and pleasure to be asked to do this sort of thing as a writer. Part of the joy of writing is getting to share it with people and getting to speak to people. And I know that everyone has different bandwidth for that. Like, I'm not speaking on behalf of all authors, but I am saying that, like, knowing your book is being read in a place you've never been is wild and thrilling and exciting and magical and never stops being the coolest thing in the world. So thank you all, friends in Connecticut, for coming and chatting today.
Much. Truly our pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, I think
Thank
that's all
you,
the time we
everyone.
have for today. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, Kate. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.